Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my updated list for Mew VMAX heading into Silver Tempest. There's some great new cards added to this deck. I just want to show you my list and some of the reasons that I have the accounts of the deck that I have. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I think Mew is like probably number one at the start of the format. At least Mew is usually number one at the start of the format, just because Mew has been optimized. There is like a 50 cards for Mew that we know is good, which means that will keep it on top and be better than all the other like Lugia decks that aren't optimized yet. We don't know the best way to play Lugia. And Mew is kind of just an already consistent deck that does what it wants to do, and you just add a couple new cards and make it even more consistent if that was even possible. So yeah, let's just head right into it. It's going to be the Fusion Strike build. There are two builds of this deck. There's a Fusion Strike build, and there's also a cool Marnie Path build as well, which I definitely wanted to work on. I haven't played games with that one yet, only with the Fusion Strike build. I do want to get to that one at some point as well. Starting with Mew VMAX, there's 3 of them. And this is pretty standard. I really shouldn't have to talk about this card too much. If you played standard format for the past, literally almost exactly a year, you know what this card does. It's been on top of the game ever since the release in Fusion Strike 1 year ago. It has the Cross Fusion Strike for 2 colorless energies. You get to choose one of your benched Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks. Use this attack. You have, honestly, in this deck, not too many options. You have Technoblast and Lotus Echo as like the only 2 you're going to be using. But you also have other attacks such as Psychic Leap that can be good in some scenarios. Even Energy Mix, sometimes Max Miracle is good versus Miltank, and it's also just a nice, reliable hit that doesn't require you to switch out like Technoblast does, but we'll get to that. Yeah, this card is just super, super good. If you don't know what this card does, then you haven't been playing too long, because this card has just been on top of the game for forever. They're also playing 4 copies of Mew V as well. Honestly, I think I've seen some lists play 3 Mew Vs. I honestly see no reason why. I really don't think there's a reason to play 3 Mew Vs. It's the best starting in your deck. It's another Fusion Strike Pokemon. Sometimes a single Mew V, when you bench it, says draw one, says draw one more card, which is always if you had a V that when you benched it said draw 1 card, or potentially even say draw 3 cards this turn, because you can use multiple Fusion Strike systems, you would probably play that card, and that's what Mew V is. As well as it's your best starter in the deck because it has favorite trait. So honestly, I don't really see any reason to go lower than 4 Mew Vs. Then we have Genesect V, which is obviously an instant 4 copies. This is probably one of the best Vs ever printed. Honestly, I've seen some tweets about the best abilities ever printed, and Fusion Strike System was on there. Fusion Strike System, just insanely powerful, allowing you to draw. Once your turn, being able to draw cards. So you have the same number of cards in your hand as you have Fusion Strike Pokemon in play, and it stacks, which means that if you have 3 Genesects in play, you can use 3 Fusion Strike systems, which means you can potentially basically use 3 to 4 Crobat V's ability every single turn. You don't have to rebench the Genesect, it's just every single turn per Genesect you get to do that effect, which is nuts. And then the attack is the main one we're going to be copying. Technoblast, the energy cost is irrelevant because Fusion Strike or Cross Fusion Strike is just 2 colorless energies, so it doesn't require you to have the cost of the attack. But it deals 210 damage, and then this Pokemon can't attack. And 210 with a couple damage modifiers will allow you to want to KO V-Stars. With just a single damage modifier, will KO all relevant evolving Vs. So yeah, super duper strong. And then the only other Pokemon we're playing is 2 copies of Meloetta. This is the Fusion Strike build, like I mentioned, and Meloetta is a staple of that. Lotus Echo dealing 70 damage for each Fusion Strike energy attached to your board. It's just really, really strong. It's such a steep increase of damage. If you have 3 Fusion Strike energies in play, it's dealing 210 damage. If you have 4, you're going up all the way up to the 280. And going up all the way to 280 damage with 0 damage modifiers is really important in this format. With Lugia, which can tank some pretty big hits, is in the game. Having just the access, that ability to just use Lotus Echo, deal 280 damage plus a couple damage modifiers to knock out a Lugia in 1 hit. It's going to be really, really nice, allowing you to kind of, you don't always have to kind of boss around the Lugia V-Star. You can't KO. You can just use Meloetta and a couple damage modifiers to want to KO it. So yeah, Meloetta, super good. Not only that, you can also attack with it turn 1, as you know. Doing 210 damage on turn 1. The single damage modifier will allow you to reach all the evolving Vs: Arceus V, Lugia V, Palkia V, Giratina V, all of them, 210 damage, turn 1 from Meloetta Echo will get you there. And that is just another part of what makes me so good, is that you always have that, like, if I go first, I'm just in an insanely good spot because I will almost always boss KO your V on turn 2. But if you make me go second, I can turn 1 knock out almost anything in your deck with Meloetta's Echo. So it's really good as that deck. A lot of strength in every aspect, either going first or second, as well as having that 1 KO option with Meloetta's Echo as well. Super, super strong card. Then we are playing the classic Mew cards for Battle VIP Pass to get our Pokemon, for Quick Balls to also get our Pokemon, as well as thin cards from our hands. We can draw more Fusion Check System. Same goes for Ultra Ball, thin cards from our hand, and getting our Pokemon that we need. We want to have Pokemon, or 6 Pokemon in play. Like 99% of the time, we want to have 6 Pokemon in play, so we can draw a maximum with Fusion Check System, and Quick Ball, Ultra Ball. So as Battle VIP Pass will help us do that. We also have 4 Cram-o-Matics that can get rid of spare Battle VIP Passes that are literally a blank card and useless past turn 1. Well, now we can just discard them with Cram-o-Matic and have the shot of getting any card we want in our deck. At the very worst, Cram-o-Matic discarding Battle VIP Pass is thinning 2 cards out of your hand. So Cram-o-Matic, super duper strong. Another card that I feel like should be played as a 4 of most of the time. If you want to like go down to 3 Cram-o-Matics and add in like a Rotom Phone, I wouldn't hate that either. But we're going with the 4 right now. 4 copies of Power Tablet because it is an insane damage modifier. Lets you scale up all the way to V-Star knockouts without having that 8 Fusion Check energies in play. But also, it's going to be needed to knock out most Vs as well, because 210, which is the amount of damage your Genesect does, the amount of damage that your Meloetta's Echo does with only 3 Fusion Check energies to play, is still going to need that extra damage modifier. And Power Tablet or Choice Belt will help you do that. Now, going into our supporter cards here, I did kind of mess up my ordering. Usually I do supporter cards instead of items here. Oh well. We have 2 Elesa Sparkle. And the only reason we're not playing 3 of them like Fusion Mew did previously before the double turbo energy build kind of took over for like a format and a half, is they played 3 Elesa Sparkle. And the reason we're not playing 2 because we have access to the powerful new item card, 4 Seal Stone, which I will get to here in a little bit, that allows you to just cherry pick that Elesa's right out of your deck whenever you need it. So if you want to have access to that turn Meloetta's Echo, not as reliant on just raw drawing it with Fusion Check System, you can just pluck it right out of your deck, either with Cram-o-Matic or with the 4 Seal Stone, which does allow you to get any card. I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, 2 copies of Elesa Sparkle, 2 copies of Boss, and the reason we're not playing 3 copies of Boss is because we have 1 copy of Serena, which is a new draw supporter that has 2 effects. You can either A, discard up to 3 cards from your hand and then draw cards until you have 5 cards in your hand, or choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon V and bring it into the active. So it's either a pretty weak draw supporter, or it can be a gust on any Pokemon V. And both those effects are decently strong. Good thing for me is that it almost always just wants to knock out 3 Chew Prizers to win the game. So Serena can usually be that 3rd boss, but also being able to discard useless cards in your hand if you already have what you want to have in the active, like your opponent already has a V-Star active and you just want to KO that, you don't really need to gust, then great. Serena can get rid of a couple spare VIP passes you have in your hand that are just sitting there taking up space. Maybe you don't need Elesa Sparkle, you want to get rid of that. Cool, you can just Serena discard that, maybe get a card or 2 extra. And the great thing is that if you do use it as a mediocre draw supporter, it's fine because you just have Genesect as well as a very not mediocre draw option. So Serena fits really, really well into this deck. Then we have a couple other supporters. 1 copy of Cyllene, which can get back Power Tablets. It can even get back Fusion Strike energies technically if you like. One of those hits the discard pile, like it gets knocked out, but you still have the other 3 if you like. Technically, you can Cyllene that 1 back on top. It's not a play that's going to come up very often, but it is technically a play that does exist. The main reason we're playing Cyllene is for getting back Power Tablets, so we can buff our damage even more. We want to just kind of we just want to KO things with Meloetta's Echo, multiple Power Tablet plays, and Cyllene helps us recycle those Power Tablets to make like that one more KO play with the Power Tablets. We can also get back Stadiums. It can get back energy if you're in a bit of pinch for like double turbo energies. Cyllene is super, super versatile card. You can actually use it multiple times with Pal Pad as well. So Cyllene, really great card. 1 copy of Marnie, and this is something that is pretty unusual for the Fusion Strike build, is playing the Marnie. I really like the Marnie ever since I played the double turbo build. I've been really enjoying Marnie and Mew just because sometimes you just have exactly what you want in the active, or you just want to play raw draw supporter. And Serena is technically draw supporter, but it's very weak draw supporter. Marnie is really, really strong. Having the option to just Marnie instead of like, if you like with a boss, having option to Marnie instead of boss. Obviously, you'd want a boss more, but having the option to Marnie instead just really limit your opponent is super, super nice, and it's really good versus the Lost Zone decks that really dislike getting Marnie. You could Pal Pad the Marnie back in, even more disruption. Just gives that new deck that little bit of hint of like flavor and disruption that it can sometimes lack. Speaking of disruption, we also have one copy of Roxanne, which is another card. These kind of like two disruption supporters, Marnie and Roxanne, have been getting cut a little bit in Japan for the Fusion Strike build at least, but I just having that Roxanne is just still so nice versus the Drapion. Having that pretty nice way to come back versus the Drapion decks, or the decks that play Drapion, is going to be really, really nice for you. So that's why I still like the Roxanne. It's also just like, not only is it just like a specific tech card for Drapion, Roxanne is just in a vacuum a good card. And having that bit of disruption in your deck, like I was mentioning with the Marnie, is going to make the Mew deck that much more threatening for these decks. Like if they just want to set up like a giant combo, like I mentioned, Lasso wants to build up a giant hand, and Italian decks want to build up a giant hand. Roxanne just denies that. It's also good for Drapion. There's really no great reason why to not play Roxanne. It's just, I think the main reason why not play is it gets clumped up in your hand. But I think having that option to come back and is just too good to just not play the Roxanne on, in my opinion, at least. You can try cutting it, but I've really enjoyed having it in there for these situations, like the Drapions. It's pretty good versus Lugia too. Then we have some one-of item cards. The first one of which might seem a little bit questionable is one copy of Rotom Phone. And honestly, I think the one copy of Rotom Phone in this list is the flex spot if you want to add like another Stadium, a third Force Seal Stone, things like that. I think Rotom Phone is the flex spot for now. It is going to be a Rotom Phone though, just because having that in the deck as just that one extra consistency card that can help you dig that extra bit deeper if you're missing that last Power Tablet, something like that, then Rotom Phone is really great for that. But I would not be like super mad at you if you cut that for something else. It is the flex spot in the list, in my opinion. We have one copy of Pal Pad, which can help you get back the Marnie, like I mentioned, versus the Lost Zone decks. Marnie is really good against that deck, so being able to get back Marnie, so you can play potentially like multiple Marnies in the game, will help really disrupt a deck like that. Getting back Roxanne if the first one doesn't work, get back a boss, get back Cyllene, like I mentioned, to get back even more Power Tablets. The Pal Pad can just really gives you access to a lot of your resources, even more obviously, specifically with the Cyllene as well. Being able to Pal Pad Cyllene, get back the Power Tablets, to get more on it KOs. Pal Pad really just makes this deck. I've really enjoyed having the Pal Pad just because it gives you so much access to every resource in your deck. It's like boss stalling isn't as scary anymore. Just like Pal Pad is just super, super good. One copy of Echoing Horn, and this has been a staple in Mew for a while now, because since Mew is so efficient in knocking out Vs, Echoing Horn lets you pretty cleanly slot it into the deck to finish off a game. Echoing Horn is something you already knocked out, and smack it right back down on the bench and boss it for the game. Yeah, and Echoing Horn is just a solid card all around. It's really good versus the Lugia tank strategies that they're going for as well. So your prize map versus Lugia, if you like go first, like boss knockout a Lugia V, Melodious Echo, KO, Lugia V-Star, and then Echoing Horn, boss, knockout, Lugia V for game, and that's kind of like your prize map versus that deck sometimes. Depending on what the Lugia deck plays, it can get a little bit more annoying, but Echoing Horn does help versus that deck as well. It's just in a vacuum, good card in Mew just because it's so efficient at doing the knockouts on the Vs. One copy of Switch Cart, and the reason we're not playing two is because we also have an Escape Rope in here as well, but also because Meloetta is an attacker as well as a second VMAX, which means because Genesect says we can attack, if we just set up a second VMAX, we can just free retreat into that second VMAX and attack with that one instead and get around that you can attack clause from the Genesect Technoblast attack. You can also just retreat into a Meloetta and attack with that and do 210 with that, for example. And also have that Escape Rope. And Escape Rope is here obviously because it's pretty good in combination with a Melodious Echo turn 1, just being able to like force something into the active. Say your opponent only benches the one Pokemon V and then just have a single prize in the active. You don't really want to ever be killing single prizers with Meloetta going second usually. So if you can just have that Escape Rope here, just really force that much more of your opponents, like force them to get the third Pokemon on their board. It's going to be really, really nice. The last one of card we have is one copy of Lost Vacuum. And this is here for a couple reasons. Oh my gosh, excuse me. Number one is that it can remove Path, obviously, but also our 4 Seal Stones, after we use the V-Star power on them, are actually useless. We have no use for them after we use the V-Star power. So being able to have that Lost Vacuum in the deck that after you use a 4 Seal Stone, it can basically just be like a quick ball. Lost Vacuum, lost only 1 card, lost stoning the 4 Seal Stone anymore. 4 Seal Stone that you don't care about anymore because you've already gotten value off of it is really, really nice. Can also Lost Vacuum opposing 4 Seal Stones like that, which is really, really nice in the mirror and in other decks like Vikavolt that might be trying, or not Vikavolt because they're going to item lock you out of your Lost Vacuum. Just other decks are going to be playing 4 Seal Stone because it's a really good card. And speaking of 4 Seal Stone, if you don't know what this card does, I'll read it to you now. It's a tool card that you attach to a Pokemon V, and it gives the Pokemon V it's attached to a V-Star power that lets you search your deck for any 1 card you want. It's half of a Starburst for any Pokemon V, and Mew is already a deck that plays 0 V-Star Pokemon, and it has access to 0 V-Star powers, which means if you can just give your deck half a Starburst to just guarantee that Elesa Sparkle Turbo going second for a knockout, guarantee the Fusion Strike Energy attachment, guarantee the Power Tablet for a knockout. Really, really good. Not only that, but there's actually been a ruling that says that 4 Seal Stone is not turned off by Path at the Peak, which means that it's impossible, if you have 4 Seal Stone, it's almost impossible for you to get Path locked out of the game, which is another huge reason to play this card. It's just an extremely good card in the deck. There's literally, honestly, literally 0 reason to not play 4 Seal Stone. It is such an insanely broken card if Mew could get any better, and, well, it did. With half of a Starburst searching your deck for any single card you want every single game. Really, really bonkers for the deck. The last item card is 2 copies of Choice Belt, which is pretty obvious because we want to have those more damage modifiers. Stadium cards, just 2 Lost Cities, no Path Shenanigans, no Pokestops because we don't want to mill Fusion Strike Energies, just 2 Lost Cities, which might seem a little bit low, but we do also have that Lost Vacuum, which can be a 3rd Path to Peak answer. So we have that Lost City, Lost Vacuum. Splits Regis is a pretty decent deck right now, I should say in this format, because Regis does have a pretty decent time in the Lugia, and Lugia is extremely popular, so having the Lost Cities against those Regis that you might run into as well is really, really, really nice. And even if you don't get value out of it in a certain matchup that you're playing it in, is at the very worst, it is a stadium that is not a Path at the Peak, which is when you have worst your stadium card can possibly be, it's just something that lets you draw cards. That's pretty nice. So, Lost City, 2 of them. And then the energies is going to be 4 copies of Fusion Strike Energy. So we can reach that high damage output with the Meloetta Echo. And then finally 3 copies of Double Turbo Energy. Because paying the Cross Fusion Strike in a single attachment is good. And that's going to be the list, guys. I will have the list down below in the description if you just want to copy that in that tabletop. Or limitless tabletop, you can do that. And yeah, that's going to do it for video, guys, on my updated Mew list heading into Silver Tempest. Hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.